You're watching South Asia Newsline, and here are the top stories we're tracking for you on Monday, the 4th of September. New Delhi all set to host a G20 summit, India to position itself as voice of global south. Unrest persists in Pakistan over inflated electricity bills. And Nepali village women turn munching maggots into profit. And now for all the details. India's Deputy Foreign Minister Meenakshi Lekhi on Monday termed India as the voice of the voiceless, global south, and said under India's presidency of the G20, it is highlighting their concerns at the global forum. Lekhi said India is in the right position to engage in conversations with the G20 nations, which control nearly 85% of the global GDP, about the needs of not-so-prosperous nations, but which are very rich in resources. Talking about absence of Chinese President Xi Jinping and Russian President Vladimir Putin during the summit in New Delhi, she said it won't impact the outcome.
And this group was almost like voiceless group. So India chose to become the voice of the voiceless, to represent their voice, because no policy will succeed until unless the have-ones and have-nots come together. And we represent both. So India is in a right position to engage in conversation with G20 nations, the most smridh, the most prosperous nation, and talk about the needs of the not-so-prosperous nations, but very rich in resources.
Well, rolling out of the red carpet for the heads of states, New Delhi is scheduled to host the G20 this coming weekend. The city has been adorned with a grand display of vibrant street art that narrates the rich tapestry of Indian history, mythology, art and culture, along with meticulously landscaped greenery. Elaborate security arrangements have also been made by Delhi police to avert any untoward incident. And India's moon mission Chandrayaan-3 lander Vikram once again soft landed on the lunar surface as it conducted a hop experiment successfully on the moon on Monday. In a statement, Indian Space Agency ISRO said the lander elevated itself by about 40 centimeters on command and landed safely at a distance of 30 to 40 centimeters away. It added the experiment exceeded the Chandrayaan mission objectives, which may inspire future sample return and human missions. India's spacecraft had landed on the unexplored south pole of the moon on August 23rd, making India the first country to achieve this feat. While moving on, Pakistan is struggling to contain public anger over soaring electricity bills, while commitments to the IMF have limited the caretaker government's options to reduce the burden of inflation. A report. Public unrest has grown in crisis-hit Pakistan, with the country hit by widespread protest in recent days over inflated electricity bills. The uproar began in August as consumers began receiving their power bills for July, with rates jumping to nearly 100%. Over the weekend, a nationwide shutdown strike was also observed, with business owners closing in protest against high electricity tariffs and taxes.
जमहूरी हक है और हम हुक्मरानों को ये बताना चाहते हैं कि आवाम का गैज़ व गज़ब बहुत ज़्यादा हो चुका है। कराची में भी आप हमें कानून को हाथ में लेने ना दें। ऐसा ना हो कि ये आवाम कानून को हाथ में ले और कानून और आवाम आपस में आमने सामने हो और दस्त गिरबां हो। ये आपकी कमज़ोरी होगी और आपकी नाअहली होगी।
Meanwhile, the economic worries have deepened further as the government hiked fuel prices to a record high on Friday, exceeding the 300 rupees mark. The hike is part of conditions for an IMF loan, which has complicated the task of keeping price pressures in check.
ये जो पेट्रोल पे पहले डलवाता था 2000 में, अभी मुझे 5000 में नहीं डलता। ठीक है, गाड़ी में स्टार्ट करता हूँ, सिर्फ थोड़ा सा निकल जाए बाद 2000 का पेट्रोल किया। तो आप बताइए कि जो नॉर्मल बंदा है वो क्या उसकी सर्वाइवल कैसे हो सकती है? तो हमारे लिए मुश्किल है।
Since the Taliban takeover of Afghanistan in 2021, around 50 clashes have been reported in Afghan border areas, the de facto Interior Ministry informed on Sunday. The Tolo News reported. Taliban's Interior Ministry spokesperson Abdul Mateen Khani said the conflict was a result of aggression against Afghanistan, which had faced reactions by the Taliban forces. He said Kabul does not want negative relations and called on the neighboring countries to respect the land sovereignty and the borders of Afghanistan. The Taliban-ruled Afghanistan in recent days has been engaged in deadly clashes with Iranian and Pakistani forces over the border issue, which has been also discussed at the senior level between the different governments and the de facto authorities. And Sri Lanka has paid $100 million to Bangladesh in form of the second installment of the $200 million loan, reports have suggested. The island nation had earlier last month repaid $50 million to Bangladesh as the first installment of the loan. The amount, which was part of a currency swap agreement with the Bangladesh Bank, was provided to Sri Lanka to help it battle its financial crisis caused by economic mismanagement and the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. According to news agency UNB report, Bangladesh is expecting Colombo to repay the remaining $50 million within the current year, as Bangladesh itself is grappling with an economic crisis. And a group of women in a village in Nepal are turning the munching maggots into profit by drying and processing the insect eggs into poultry feed. Take a look. In a village about 30 kilometers south of Nepal's capital Kathmandu, 6 women wearing yellow rubber gloves and surgical masks work in a shed, gently squeezing the wet larvae of the black soldier fly into small plastic containers. The protein-rich insect eggs are dried and processed into feed for fish, chicken and pigs and sell at 70 Nepali rupees per kilogram. Opened in March with a $110,000 grant provided by the Women's Bank Finland, the fly farm is billed as the first of its kind in the Himalayan nation. The project is being coordinated by the Charity Federation of Women Entrepreneurs Association of Nepal.
अब यो बिजनेसले राम्रै हुन्छ भन्ने आशा छ। अब यो बिजनेसलाई अब हामी दिदीबहिनी मिलेर अब ठुलो बनाउने, त्यसपछि गाउँको दिदीबहिनीहरुलाई नि यो काम दिने भन्ने।
Nepal is among the world's 10 poorest countries, and people in villages are mainly subsistence farmers. The farm hopes to produce 3,500 kilograms of larvae in one production cycle, which ranges between 45 and 60 days.
It was launched because it's a green business, and this will help in managing the organic waste, which is one of the core issues, and ultimately it will also help in climate change.
Well, a restaurant in India's Indore city has introduced its menu in Braille for its blind or visually impaired customers to promote inclusivity and foster a sense of independence. A group of visually impaired school children were invited this past weekend for a treat at the restaurant named Guru Kripa. Chairperson of the Young Indians group, which has come up with this idea, said that they are in talks with more restaurants to create more such places.
आज मुझे अपने आप पे बहुत प्राउड फील हो रहा है कि मैंने खुद ने खाना ऑर्डर किया है, हम सब ने खुद ने खाना ऑर्डर किया है। आज हमें बहुत प्राउड फील हो रहा है। मैंने कभी कल्पना ही नहीं की थी कि मैं कभी होटल जाऊंगी या मेन्यू कार्ड देखूंगी, खुद ऑर्डर करूंगी, कभी नहीं सोचा था लाइफ में।
यहाँ पर महेश दृष्टिहीन के 46 किड्स को यहाँ पे लाए हैं जो स्पेशली एबल्ड हैं, ब्लाइंड, तो उनके लिए ब्रेल मेन्यू हमने सेट करा है, जो यहाँ गुरु कृपा होटल में करा है हमने विजयनगर में। तो यहाँ पे वो खुद कॉन्फिडेंटली मेन्यू पढ़ पा रहे हैं और खुद से बिना किसी की सहायता के ऑर्डर कर पा रहे हैं, तो उनको वो चीज़ का बहुत कॉन्फिडेंस आया है।
Well, India is home to nearly 27 million people with disabilities. They are largely an invisible minority with limited access and facilities to public transport and to spaces such as restaurants and movie theatres. That's all in tonight's edition. We'll see you same time tomorrow. Good night.